104 teams to go in my road to predict all 131 teams this college football offseason. Guys, we're moving on to the final team in the Big Ten, and my personal favorite team, the Ohio State Buckeyes. This is a team that, well, last year missed out on the college football playoff. Heck, missed out on the Big Ten championship, for that matter, something fans in Columbus are just not used to. However, this was an Ohio State team that came in last year with a lot of questions, and some of those questions were answered, and we're going to see if some more questions get answered this year in 2022. This Ohio State team did not mess around in the offseason. Can the Buckeyes find their way back in the playoff, and can they make a lot of people's wishes come true and bring Ohio State another national title? Or will this team fall short of the playoff yet again in 2022? What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel, and I'm predicting all 131 teams this college football season. And yeah, that means I'm doing your favorite team, so go ahead, hit the subscribe button, and ring the bell so you guys know when that video gets uploaded. And being an Ohio State fan myself, I am going to recognize that there are people out there that are going to know this Ohio State team a lot more than me. So if you feel like I missed something, glossed over something, want to add something on, leave it in the comment section down below, and I'll be happy to read through them. So Buckeyes 2022, they are my #1 ranked team coming into the Big Ten Conference season in 2022. Last year, it was a 10-win regular season, 8-1 conference play, but they missed out on the Big Ten championship game. They lost to their rival Michigan. And by a lot of people's standards, it was a very, very disappointing year for Ohio State last year. But guys, I got to be honest with you. Being an Ohio State fan myself, I was not disappointed with this team last year, especially considering how young this team was last year. Look, if you guys if your team goes 10-2 in the regular season and then wins the Rose Bowl after that, your program's doing something right. So to consider this Ohio State team a disappointment, to me, I just don't see it. I think this is a team that has a very promising future coming into 2022, because this was one of the best offenses in the nation last year. 560 yards per game and around 46 points per game last year. Now, a lot of people feel as if this defense was what held this team down, what held this team back. 366 yards and 21 points per game. That stat line would say otherwise, but when you look at how they played in games like Utah and Michigan and Oregon and some other games this season as well, yeah, defense definitely was the concern for this Ohio State team, and Ohio State fans want more. They want to see a better defense. Well, you know what? Ryan Day answered that, and he brings in Jim Knowles to be that defensive coordinator, and that is huge. That is a huge pickup for this Ohio State team. We'll talk about some defensive talent they have coming back, but we got to talk about some overall talent that this team has leaving the building, has leaving the shoe. Couple quarterbacks. Quinn Ewers goes back to Texas, where he originally committed out of high school. And then Jack Miller, the third-string quarterback, has transferred over to Florida to go be the backup to, well, presumably be the backup to Anthony Richardson. But Jack Miller, a guy that, again, I think can go start at other programs, but when you play behind guys like C.J. Stroud and Kyle McCord, it's going to be a little hard to do. Running back Master Teague had 355 yards, 4 touchdowns last year. He has gone to the NFL. Also, players gone to the NFL, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jeremy Ruckert. Ruckert, 309 yards, 3 touchdowns, plays like a wide receiver at tight end. But Olave and Wilson, 2,000 yards between the two of them almost, and 25 touchdowns between the two of them. Olave with 13 and Wilson with 12. I mean, that's just ridiculous numbers, and that's ridiculous amount of production that this Ohio State team is losing off of that wide receiver group. Sorry, water break. In terms of the defensive side of the ball, though, you're losing Haskell Garrett, Tyreek Smith off of that defensive line. Tyreek Smith chipped in 3 sacks. Haskell Garrett chipped in 5.5. When you look at the defensive back as well, a lot of pieces gone. Marcus Hooker, Sevyn Banks, Ryan Watts, Bryson Shaw are all gone off this team. Sevyn Banks, Ryan Watts, Bryson Shaw, a couple of the bigger names as well as Marcus Hooker. A lot of them contributed, or all 4 of those guys, I should say, contributed to this Ohio State team last year. But guys, you know what? There's still a lot of talent coming back on this Ohio State team. Starting off with the offensive end, it was one of the best offenses in the nation last year, led by a Heisman Trophy finalist at quarterback. And one of the favorites to win the Heisman Trophy yet again this year in C.J. Stroud. 4,435 yards, 44 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. 6 interceptions, for Stroud last year. Also a 71.9% completion percentage. This guy, it was amazing to see how much he improved as the season went along last year. But also, the talk is in camp that he's only getting better, which is scary for the rest of the college football world. Trevion Henderson, Mayan Williams figured to be that 1-2 at running back. Henderson had 1,248 yards and 15 touchdowns for the Buckeyes last year. Was a very dynamic running back, one that Ohio State has not seen since the J.K. Dobbin days. So it's been a couple years since Ohio State's seen that good of a running back. Of course, what the transfer from Oklahoma, Trey Sermon, did as well. But this is a guy that can only improve his play in Trevion Henderson. And speaking of people that can only improve his play, how about Jackson Smith-Njigba? He had a record year last year and a record game in the Rose Bowl. 1,606 yards and 9 touchdowns. And this was the guy that Wilson Olave kept pointing to and saying, this guy is ridiculous. He'll also have guys like Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka there to take off some of the load for him as well. But it's going to be all about C.J. Stroud and Jackson Smith-Njigba for this Ohio State offense in 2022. On the defensive side, still a lot of talent that new DC Jim Knowles has to work with. Jack Sawyer, Zach Harrison, JT, CJ Stokes, a freshman coming in, Tommy Eichenberg, Chip Trayanum, a transfer coming in, defensive backs Ronnie Hickman, Josh Proctor, Denzel Burke, and Tanner McAllister being brought in from Oklahoma State following Jim Knowles to go ahead and help give a little bit of an experience lift to this defensive back group. The Ohio State schedule looks like this. It starts out with a game against Notre Dame in non-conference, and man, what an anticipated matchup that is. I don't think I've been this excited for a college football game in a very, very long time. That's going to be a phenomenal non-conference game to watch. Week 1 in the shoe, prime time on ABC. It's going to be a phenomenal game. But there are a lot of questions for Notre Dame coming into the season. I'll talk more about that later. Arkansas State and Toledo are a couple games where Ohio State should probably roll, but there's your non-conference slate. And then your conference slate. You got home games against Wisconsin, Rutgers, Iowa, Indiana, and of course the Michigan Wolverines. And when you look at games on the road, Michigan State, Penn State, Northwestern, and Maryland are your road games. So let's go ahead and kind of break down this schedule a little bit. Again, the game against Notre Dame. Plain and simple, that is a game where I think a lot of people are going to expect Ohio State to win. Yet I think the game can be closer than expected, but Notre Dame has a lot of questions coming into the season. Who's going to play quarterback, right? Who are going to be the guys for Notre Dame that step up, that fill the gaps? They do have some transfers coming in that program, and there's a lot of talent on that team. But going into Columbus in Marcus Freeman's first regular season game is a tough draw. It's a very, very tough draw, especially with the amount of talent that's on this Ohio State team this upcoming season. Other two non-conference games don't really interest me that much. And in conference play, there are a couple games I'd like to call out. You got home games against Wisconsin, Rutgers, and Iowa. All teams that, if you play on the road, who definitely could be dangerous. Rutgers is going to be competitive this year. Iowa, they got to get that quarterback play going. Same thing with Wisconsin. Both Iowa and Wisconsin should be two pretty good defensive teams. But with the way that this Ohio State offense is, with how dynamic it was last year, and the talk through camp is that it's only getting better. I mean, I don't see much of a shot for Wisconsin and Iowa realistically. But when you look at some of the games, and then of course you got the home game against Michigan at the end of the year that I'll talk about later. But when you look at games on the road for this Ohio State team, Michigan State, Penn State, and Maryland are some of the games that jump out. You know, I might say, why Maryland? Ohio State has never had a problem with them except that 1 year in 2018. It's a Maryland team that can be dangerous. This is the Maryland team that is capable of pulling off upsets in 2022, and Ohio State's got to watch out. They got to be prepared for that passing offense. But again, it's late in the season. You get a lot of time to figure out that passing offense for Jim Knowles, and I think Jim Knowles is going to have Ohio State ready right out of the gate against Notre Dame. Got to be ready to play that one. On the road against Michigan State, Penn State, two really, really tough environments to play in. That Penn State game probably going to be the whiteout game in Happy Valley, close to Halloween. Going to be an absolutely phenomenal atmosphere. And then when you look at that game against Michigan State there as well. Michigan State was a phenomenal team last year, and I talked about it in my Michigan State video. Michigan State has to improve that defensive back play. If that passing defense does not get better, I don't see a way that Michigan State beats Ohio State this year. I don't do game by game predictions. I do more record or percentage based outlook to help me predict the team's record. So games in red and orange, which you don't see any of here on the schedule, but in case you did, red was you're not going to win the game. Orange is you're still probably not going to win, but it's college football and upsets can happen. Yellow are your 50-50 or high upset potential games. Yellow-green are games where you should be able to win, but you got to watch out for the team on the other side of the ball. And games in green are games that you're good to win. 4 games in green, 2 in non-conference, and 2 in conference. And the majority of the schedule you see in a green color. I feel like Ohio State, much like Alabama this year, is just going to be one of those teams that is ridiculously unfair this year. I think their offense is going to be very, very dynamic. I think this defense is going to be much improved under Jim Knowles. But let's break down further some of the more interesting matchups. Again, that non-conference date with Notre Dame. That is going to be, in my opinion, just a phenomenal game to watch. I really do think that that game against Notre Dame is going to be spectacular. I think it's going to be fun to watch and everything in between. And when do you get two of the most historic and most recognizable programs in college football on the gridiron together in a regular season game? You don't get to see this often. So if you're a college football fan and you don't watch the game, I don't know how you consider yourself a college football fan. It's two of the most historic programs in all of the sport. It's going to be a lot of fun. But with how many questions Notre Dame has coming into the season, who's the quarterback? How's Marcus Freeman going to fit in? This is his first head coaching gig. And with just the amount of already proven talent on this Ohio State team, I see Ohio State winning by double digits in the shoe. And then when you look again, you could be upset against Michigan State, against Maryland. It can't happen, Ohio State fans. But the two most likely losses on this schedule are highlighted in yellow. It's the road game against Penn State and the home game against Michigan. Michigan proved the haters wrong. They can beat Ohio State. They did it last year. Michigan's going to be out to prove that they can beat Ohio State for 2 years in a row, which hasn't happened in a very, very long time. However, Ohio State also has that big chip on their shoulder. It was a 15-point loss against the Wolverines in the Big House last year. Now they get them in the shoe, and Ohio State is going to look to rock their world. Michigan returns a lot of experience, a lot of talent. That's still going to be a very good football team. And again, at the end of the year, that could be the game that decides who wins the Big Ten East. Then you look at that game against Penn State. Penn State's going to look to try to put themselves back on the map. They're going to look to be a pretty good football team this year as well. And Happy Valley, the whiteout, one of, if not the toughest environment to play in all of college football. But what did I say? I think this Ohio State team is just going to be unfair. Call me biased if you want, but I have this Ohio State team going 12-0. With the way that this offense just performed last season, and we got a glimpse of it, of what the offense might look like this year in the Rose Bowl against Utah, it's just going to be ridiculous. It's going to be stupid. Ohio State's going to score all of the points, and this defense should be much improved with Jim Knowles coming in to be that defensive coordinator. I got Ohio State 12-0, and my second and only undefeated team left in the nation. So Ohio State, Bama, your two undefeated teams. That's going to do it for my Big Ten and my Ohio State predictions. Look for the standing video to come out later today. Remember to play hard, tailgate harder. Anything you can help support the channel would be great. And I'll see all you guys in the next one. Goodbye.